Hey everyone, Jeff Glover here with Glover U, coming to you with part 2 of step 2. We spoke last Monday on everything that you need to do to get your mind in the game and your head straight and your business plan in order for generating leads. I spent a good 30 minutes or so if you haven't referenced or if you haven't watched it, I would encourage you to go back and reference that. I did that recording last Monday at noon Eastern Standard Time. And I promised you today that I would cover our top 5 sources of business. And actually, I'm going to share with you a list of all 25 of our sources of business. Now, I talked about in the last series that I don't want you focusing on 25 sources of business. I want you picking 1 or 2 above and beyond what you're already doing. Focus on it, master it, and then add another one. The mistake I think a lot of agents make is they sprinkle around money or time or investments into different things, and then they find out that none of them actually end up working. Or the other mistake they make is they don't stick with something long enough. You know, whenever we make an investment of time or money into something, we give everything a full 6 to 12 months commitment, even with no results. So if we're going 3-4 months with no results, if I've done enough research to know that it makes sense to go in this direction, even if we're not getting results, we don't pull the plug after 3 months. We give it 6 months, we give it 9 months, we give it 12 months, depending on what it is. So I'm going to give you a list of 25, which includes our top 5 sources of business. And what I'll encourage you to do is to pick 1 or 2 and add it to your current list of sources of business. I would also encourage you, like we talked about in part 1 of this video, I would also encourage you to go back to the sources of business that you are getting business from. And let's say, for instance, you're great with your past clients in your sphere. How can we double down on that? We talked a lot about doubling down on your best source. So identify what your best source is and double down on that. And oh, by the way, while you're at it, let's add an additional source. And I'll share those with you now, as promised. So I'll first go through our top 5 or 6 sources of business where we spend most of our time, and then I'll go through a list of another 19 or so for a total of 25 different ways that you can get business in this market today. So number 1 may surprise you. Our largest source of business today is actually past clients and past client referrals. Now, the reason why I say it may surprise you, if you know anything about me, or if you've done any research, or if you've known me for a while, you probably can figure out, or you probably know that I've been more of the go after the type of business of people that I never met. There's 2 types of people in this world. People you know, people you don't know. Which group is bigger? I would always go after the group of people that I didn't know. Well, fortunately, one nice thing about this business is when you're in it for a little while, all of a sudden, you give good customer service, you start to receive repeat and referrals from your past clients. And believe it or not, now, of course, 15 years into the business and 15 years of figuring out ways to get better at customer service, that led to past clients and past client referrals as our number 1 source of business. Now, of course, I can't take all the credit because we've got some awesome agents that are phenomenal with their clients and their databases. And of course, for a lot of our agents, again, past clients and past client referrals is their number 1 source. So it was never really the top source for me. It just recently became the top source. I'll do a separate video on specifically what you can do to improve the business from your past clients and past client referrals. But I'll just tell you, we follow a really simple formula. I know there's a million of them out there, right? There's 33 touch, there's 37 calls, there's all kinds of different formulas. We follow a very simple formula, and that includes 4 pieces of mail, 2 phone calls, and 1 private client event. 4 pieces of mail, 2 phone calls, and 1 private client event. So that formula has worked for us for a long time. Again, 4 pieces of mail, 2 phone calls a year. This is in a year's time. 4 pieces of mail quarterly, okay? 2 phone calls and 1 private client event. That formula has worked well, got us to the point to where we're at. That's our number 1 source of business, past clients and past client referrals. Number 2 source of business. Again, another one that was never a big one for me. Again, I've got a little time on my side and being on the ground every single day and working with our agents at Jeff Glover & Associates. And of course, we've got a lot of agents that have been doing this 5, 10, 15 years as well. Number 2 source of business is sphere of influence and sphere of influence referrals. It's different than past clients because, of course, past clients have done business with you before. Sphere of influence or sphere of influence referrals that are relying and trusting on the credibility and what they know about you. So sphere of influence referrals, people you know that are referring you business or people you know that are doing business with you. Again, that falls under the same category as our past client. So that means 4 pieces of mail. We have a database, 4 pieces of mail, 2 phone calls, and 1 client event. 4, 2, and 1 has worked both for past clients and Sphere, and I'm proud to say that those are our top 2 sources of business today. I couldn't say that 5 years ago, by the way. 5 years ago, it was expireds and for sale by owners, and then it got to advertising, and now it's past clients and centers of influence. Our number 3 source of business right now, and again, I'll go back, I'll do a completely separate video, probably 20-30 minutes long, just on past clients and sphere of influence, because there's a lot to say there, but I gave you the simple formula. You know, you might be wondering, well, what are you sending them and so forth. I'll get into that at a later date. Number 3 source of business, for sale by owners. All right, for sale by owners have been a great source for us because the market's been so hot. So when the market's hot, a lot of for sale by owners throw their signs up. Do some of them sell? Absolutely. Do we make calls every single day to for sale by owners that say, sorry, we've already accepted an offer? We sure do. But when an offer's hot, when a market's hot and inventory levels are low, there's a lot of opportunities for sale by owners. And I will tell you, in the last 12 months, it's been our 3rd biggest source of business. Next, expired listings. Now you may say, well, expired listings are a little tough to come by right now because the market's so hot. And by the way, I know the market is shifting in some parts of the country, and we're starting to feel a little bit here in Detroit as well. So I'm happy about that because that means more expired opportunities. And if you didn't know, that's essentially what I built my business on. Back in 2007, 8, 9, my business was 100% expired. So there was plenty to go around. You know, in Metro Detroit, not only did we have the financial crisis, we had the auto crisis. So we had 100 expireds a day. Today we have about 30, maybe 35. Now, of course, you may be saying, well, how do you have 30, 35? I only have 5 in my market. Well, you only have 5 in your market because you haven't expanded your market enough. What I mean by that is most of our agents are willing to drive 45 minutes to over an hour to a listing appointment, and sometimes up to 2 hours. And I look at it like this. If I told you that I have a $5,000 check or a $3,000 check or a $7,000, whatever the amount, just call it $5,000 check waiting for you, but you got to drive 2 hours and pick it up, would you go get it? You probably would. So then why wouldn't you go take a listing? Because depending on your business model, for our agents that are on our team, of course, there's not a whole lot that they have to do after they take the listing because we take care of everything else. So expireds is our number 4 source of business in the last 12 months, and it wouldn't have worked if we didn't expand our territory. We had to expand our territory to get a certain amount of volume every single day. So if right now your rule of thumb is you'll drive 30, 45 minutes, I would encourage you to double it. Get up to an hour and a half away. Again, for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, you'd drive to go there to pick it up, wouldn't you? Next, number 5, which is something that I'm very passionate and I wouldn't say I'm really known for, although I did start doing some advertising back in 2012, and that is mass advertising. So I want to make sure everyone understands, especially those in Michigan or Metro Detroit, I didn't spend a single dollar on advertising until our GCI was over $1 million, $1.5 million. I think it was about 1.4 actually when I made the decision to spend money on advertising. And the reason why I share that is because I think a lot of people think that you have to have this big marketing budget for mass advertising to work. And the reality is you don't have to have a big marketing budget. You just have to pick a category and you have to own it. So once we were over the $1 million level of GCI, I made the business decision to start investing in some advertising, and I started with 1 radio station. All right, 1 classic rock radio station ended up leading to a rock station with the morning talk show, which ended up leading to AM radio, and all of a sudden 1 or 2 radio stations turned into 5 or 6. And the reason why I added radio stations because obviously I was seeing results with the 1 and felt like it made sense to keep a similar demographic, and started paying attention to the results and the calls. And next thing you know, within 2 years, we're on 12 radio stations. So radio was our first introduction, if you will, into mass advertising. There's so many things you can do for advertising or mass advertising. That's the one I chose. Not saying it's the right one. That's the one that worked for us. And again, didn't spend a dime. We got the business up to $1.5 million in GCI through face-to-face and calling over the phone before we spent a single dollar on advertising. After radio, we added billboards, and we saw a major increase in our results from radio once we added billboards because now it was audio and visual. And of course, most people are listening to the radio in the car, and most people are seeing billboards while they're in the car, so 2 things happening at once, and that certainly helped our results. Doing billboards without radio, I think it could work, but you won't get the results unless you have radio as well. And we had both simultaneously, and at one point in time, we had over 40 boards here in Southeast Michigan. We've scaled it back a little bit, but for the most part, it's still a major source of business for us, the radio and the billboards combined. Sometime around 2015, so we did 2 years of radio. Then we added billboards in 2014, so radio was 12 and 13. We added billboards in 14, and then in 2015, because the business was going so well, we decided to add another source, and that was TV. And TV is very expensive. I'll tell you the ROI on TV is not as healthy actually as billboard and radio, but it's a great way to get a message out quickly. So we definitely saw an uptick in the business that we got from TV. It's just the ROI was not the same as the billboard and radio combination, and TV is still effective, and that's why we do it to this day. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, radio, billboard, TV, gosh, what are you spending? Well, we spent about $1.5 million on advertising. Last year, we spent nearly $2 million. But remember, our GCI is $6 million. So my goal this year was to get our advertising a little bit more in line and get that back down to around 1.2, 1.3 to follow the model. 6 million times 20%, 6 million GCI times 20% is 1.2. So I want to stay at that 20% level, and we'll definitely be at that level or below next year, of course, assuming we can continue to increase our GCI as well. Next, internet leads. Now, internet leads, I did internet leads right around the same time that we added radio, and that was my first purchase was Zillow. Zillow was very effective. For those of you that have done Zillow back in the day, 2011, 2012, nobody was buying Zillow leads. So, you could spend $1,000 a month on Zillow and have like a 10-to-1 return on that. Now, you're lucky if you get 1.5 to 1. From everything I see and hear, it sounds like they're trying to get the agents to about 1.5 to 2 to 1. And that's kind of the sweet spot for them to where people will still spend money. I'll tell you, our Zillow spend got as much as $24,000 a month. And we started realizing that there were other ways we could spend that money. And so we've dialed that back a bit, especially now with how saturated Zillow is. But it's still a big source of business for us, coming in at number 6 on the list. Next, I have written down just listed, just sold, circle prospecting. So a lot of our inside sales associates like to make these calls because it kind of breaks up the staleness, if you will, of the for sale by owners and the expireds. And so they get into just listed, just sold calls. That's calling around listings and sales. And the reason why these are effective is because of the part of the brain called the reticular activator. I'll give you an example of it. You buy a new car. Next thing you know, you see that car on the road everywhere you go. Same thing happens with real estate. So the reason why just listed, just sold calls are powerful is number one, because it's more of a warm call. It's not a cold call. And number two, when we enter with the script, we're calling because we know when one home comes on the market, usually 2 or more go up right away. So I was wondering, when do you plan on moving? Because they just saw or they see a sign in their neighborhood, it strikes up conversation. Oh, look at the Jones are thinking about selling. Well, maybe it's time. Oh, I hear the market's great. Interest rates are low. It starts that conversation. So it's a much more warm call, and just listed, just sold calls comes in at number 7 on my list. Number 8, agent referrals. Of course, going to events, coming to Glover U events, going to your company events, going to any trainer events that are out there. You meet a lot of great agents, exchange business cards, make a good impression, follow up with them afterwards. It'll lead to great agent referrals. Nowadays, you got to kind of stay on top. I'm not a big fan of this, and we're fortunate at the company that I'm with, Keller Williams, that they're changing this model to a more, you can go on and look up any agent's production essentially, and where they're selling real estate versus the Facebook groups. I think it's a little difficult. If you're a productive agent, it's hard to stay on top of all of those because if you're a productive agent, you shouldn't have Facebook open on your phone all day. So I get that that's a little tough, and I'd rather make face-to-face referrals by going to events. Obviously, you guys come to our events and so forth. That comes in at number 8. Number 9, online referral sources. So sites like Agent Machine, Home Light, Top Agents Ranked, there's probably a half dozen of them out there that are pretty popular. If you want to check them out, you can just Google top agents in my area, and you'll see, the ones that are paying for sponsored ads. So you'll see those people are vying for the consumer's business, and then they're taking that lead and selling it back to you. So obviously, Home Light is probably one of the more popular ones now. That's beginning to be getting to the point where that could be a big one for us, especially if you have a lot of sales and a lot of great reviews. Which reminds me, when I was talking about Zillow. Okay, so we don't just get leads because we buy leads from Zillow. We put a strong focus on reviews and getting reviews. I would say, based on the last conversation I had with our Zillow rep, about 1/3 of the people that reach out to us not because of a property they clicked on, but because of our reviews. So we did a push, and we still do it to this day. We did a push, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years ago when reviews first came out to get everyone to review us as much as possible. And we had a nice little script at the end of the transaction. Somebody would call and say, hey, in order to close out your file, we need you to go online and give us a review. And it's amazing the results that we got from that. Now we send people thank you cards and so forth. So going back to Zillow, make sure you're getting those reviews. Those reviews are crucial. Or at least make sure you're on a team that has a ton of reviews. Because quite frankly, the more reviews, the more power you have. Next, online referral sources. We talked about that. That was number 9 for us. Number 10, rounding out the top 10, open houses. We take open houses very seriously. In fact, once a month we do an open house extravaganza. That's where we get all of our agents involved. And we have anywhere from 12 open houses to over 20 open houses on a given weekend. We might promote it on billboards. We might mention it in some radio ads, and definitely social media posts, and of course online. You can put it on all the internet sites and so forth. Open houses are effective in a seller's market, not effective in a buyer's market. And they're effective because buyers will go to extreme measures to find houses. So, you may have heard the old adage, which I was always a big believer, hey, I'd rather go into the office and prospect for 3 or 4 hours versus sitting and waiting for people to come to me. And there is some truth to that. I still have that belief, but I will tell you this. There's nothing more effective that you can do to get that many face-to-faces in that short a time, right? If you think about the average open house, let's say just 6 or 7 people stop by, which is probably average. Sometimes you get 2 or 3, sometimes you get 30, 40, 50, 100. Let's just say the average is 6 or 7, all right? 6 or 7 in a 3-hour period. That's 6 or 7 face-to-faces, impressions, conversations that you can have face-to-face with prospective buyers. There's no other activity that you can do that gets you in front of that many highly qualified buyers as an open house, and that's why it rounds up our top 10. Make an event of it. Like I said, we do open house extravaganzas once a month where we get everyone involved. Next, number 11, sign calls, right? So these are yard sign calls, and you see all kinds of stuff out there today. Text for info, call this 800 number. We've always used an 800 number. We're probably going to be switching that to a text number soon, but regardless, even just a phone number, you're going to get sign calls, and that's number 11 for us. Number 12, investors. So these are people that are buying and flipping, buying and holding. A lot of our agents have relationships with a lot of investors because of our advertising. A lot of people reach out to us saying, hey, you guys must have a great amount of inventory. Can I work with you guys? Investors is a great source of business and certainly something that you could circle as an avenue to focus, especially when you're newer to the business. Next, current client referrals. And I have written down here, what's your system for collecting current client referrals? We have a process where at least 3 times throughout the transaction, a member of our staff is asking them who they know that's looking to buy or sell. Of course, we look at the honeymoon period, okay? What's the honeymoon period? 7 days after you meet them for a listing presentation, 7 days after they sign a listing contract with you, 7 days after the home sells, and 7 days after it closes. That's your honeymoon phase. All right, 7 days after they meet you, 7 days after you sign a contract, 7 days after it sells, 7 days after it closes on a listing. On a buy side, 7 days after the buyer consultation, 7 days after the offer's accepted, 7 days after closing, and sometimes 7 days after their key exchange if there's some occupancy involved there. So we look at the honeymoon periods, and that's when we ask our current clients for referrals because that's when their confidence in us is at its all-time high. So next time on your next transaction, think of the honeymoon phase, and when you've got them on the phone, ask them who else that they know that you can help. Next, number 14, orphan clients. So this is after closings. These are people that bought listings of yours, or maybe I had a seller call us because I was representing the seller and they were the buyer and they had an agent on their end. And they said, you know what, our agent was complaining so much about how much you stalled in negotiations, and we knew that you were working hard for your seller. So instead of calling our agent, we called you to sell the house. 3 years goes by or whatever. And it's amazing. Agents are out there complaining about listing agents stalling because we're trying to do what's the best interest of the seller. And because of that, client calls back and says, hey, you did such a great job for your seller. I want you to represent us. So orphan clients, these are clients of the other agent where the other agent might drop the ball. And let's face it, 7, 8 out of 10 agents end up dropping the ball because they either give a poor experience or they don't do any follow-up after the closing. And if the market shift is coming like we're seeing, a lot of agents are going to get out of the business. We'll talk about that in a second. So orphan clients. Remember, after closing, the agency relationship terminates, so it's fair game. Now, of course, you want to be mindful of this. You don't want to go after somebody's client. You don't want to get the reputation of, oh, yeah, after the closing, Jeff is going to call your clients. You don't want to have that reputation, but you do things by the book. You do things right, and you have a good conversation after the transaction closes, and you can certainly get orphan client business. Number 15, you'd probably be surprised by this. It's lower on our list, social media. Yep, out of 25, I put social media at 15. Why is social media at 15? Because I do think it's good for you to stay out in front of people, and I do think it's good for you to get some business, but you're not going to build a big business on social media. It drives me crazy seeing all these gurus and these trainers out there saying, oh yeah, build this on social media. No, They're saying that because they read it in a book somewhere, right? Again, I know I sound like a broken record, but that's the difference in working with us at Glover U and the rest. I'm on the ground every single day with our people, and I'm here to tell you, as much as we promote on social media and as much as we spend on social media, it's not our top 5. So don't make it one of yours. Number 16, small to medium-sized builder. I used to use the script inventory reduction specialist. Small to medium-sized builders. These are builders that necessarily don't have the budget to pay a person to sit in a model. You can work something out with them. Maybe work out a deal where, you know, they give you all the listing or all the names and numbers of everyone that visits them, and maybe you give them a discount on commission if those people are buying, whatever. Work something out with a small to medium-sized builder in your area, and be prepared to go in there with a presentation of you are a builder specialist and you help builders get their inventory sold. Number 17, lender programs. These are starting to become more popular. You're probably familiar with Quicken Loans. They have in-house realty. They refer leads to agents. There's Mellow Home that's out there. There's different types of lender programs that are becoming more popular. Again, it's number 17 on my list. It's not in the top 5, so don't spend a lot of time on it, but it's certainly a way to get business. Number 18, direct mail. Now, I have direct mail a little lower on the list because, number one, these are all of our actual sources of business, by the way. Because what happens with direct mail supports everything else you do, right? So if I'm calling on expireds, or I'm calling on for sale by owners, and I'm doing direct mail to expireds and for sale by owners, or if I'm calling on my database and I'm doing direct mail, it makes the call easier. It makes my conversion rate go up. So even though they might not always call in and say, hey, I got your mailer, and sometimes they do, that's why it's number 18 on the list, it makes your conversion that much better when they're familiar with you because you've already dropped something in the mail to them. So direct mail to expireds, direct mail to for sale by owners, direct mail to your database is going to increase your conversion rate and make that a more profitable source of business for you. Number 19, affiliate referrals. There's a lot of people you give business to: mortgage, title, home inspection, insurance. Those people should be getting business back to you. All right, so affiliate referrals. I don't have to spend a lot of time on that. Number 20 on the list, cold doors and cold calls. Now, you would think, well, that one should be like 25. Not necessarily in a hot market. I wrote down, refer the hot buyer no inventory script. They're out there. You could probably try to find one. I know that one isn't on our website, but the agents that work with us end up getting a copy of that script. But essentially, it's similar to a just listed, just sold call, but this is when you actually have a buyer and you're calling around a neighborhood looking for a listing for that buyer. What you'll find out is you might sell your buyer a home, and in the meantime, you may get a listing while you're doing it. So cold doors, cold calls, number 20 on the list, using the hot buyer no inventory script. Number 21, depending on the company you're at, this is still one that's available at many companies, floor time, right? These are just calls coming into the office. The agent isn't answering, well, whatever. These are just leads that are floating around that come into the office. I know a lot of companies still do floor time, and depending on if you're on a real estate team, you may have some sort of version of floor time, which could be leads, round robin, whatever. But floor time is number 21 on the list. Number 22, relocation business. If you're lucky enough to get into some relationships with relocation companies, which you just meet them out there at the events. Of course, if you're at a company that's certified relocation, you can get relocation business. These are corporate transferees moving in and out of the state. Of course, there's referral fees attached to them. We don't do a whole ton of them, but it's 22 on our list. Number 23, buyer seminars. Of course, if we're heading into a shift, I can tell you buyer seminars will become more and more popular. And they're even popular now because it's so tough to get an offer accepted. So if you were to do a buyer seminar on how to acquire a home in this market, how to get your offer accepted, you're going to get some people to show up. There's no doubt about it. Number 24 on the list, business networking groups, LBN, BNI. There's so many of them. You know, they meet on like Wednesday or Thursday at 7 in the morning or 8 in the morning before work gets started. Go once a week or so. You're going to get referrals from it. Not a big one for us. It's number 24 on the list, but BNI and networking groups is definitely a way to get business. You know, I have a running joke. I call networking not working. So when agents tell me, oh yeah, I'm going to get my business through networking. Okay, well, that's not going to work because networking isn't really working. Of course, having great conversations and getting people to know you and getting people to like you and getting people to trust you is all part of the process. But it's not going to be the only thing to do to build a big business. You're going to have to do more than just networking. Finally, number 25, old company files of agents who have left the business. So we all have teams or companies that we're on where agents have left the business, or you might have a top agent in town that's getting ready to retire from the business. You can buy their database. It's number 25 on their list, so it's not a big one for us right now, but it could be one day, and it's certainly one that you don't want to ignore. So there you have it, the top 25 sources of business today, and I promise you I left some off. I just shared with you the top 25 sources that we get. Now, to put it in perspective, right, so number 1 through 5, on the list, past client referrals, sphere of influence referrals, for sale by owners, expireds, and mass advertising. Okay, those 5 get us probably 700 transactions alone just from those 5, right? And then internet leads, just listed, just sold, agent referrals, like number 7 through 25 make up the other 300, 350 transactions. So I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I can't stress enough how important it is to master your 3. Identify 3 sources of business that you can focus on. If you only have 1 right now, double down on that and add another source. Don't try to master all 25. Just do 1 at a time. And if it takes you several years, that's fine. That's part of the process. You're going to be around hopefully a long time. That is it for step 2. I hope you will join me next week while we get into step 3, which is lead conversion. So I'm going to be sharing with you all my lead conversion ideas and strategies over at Glover U Facebook page. Make sure you follow us, like the page. Check our content out at gloveru.com, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.